And you don't want everyone. You just want the people that mess with you. I'm a convenience store. And this is what I got. I sell this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, I don't sell that. I just want to sell what I sell to the people that I sell. I'm not Walmart.
Right.
Waking up with my eyes wide shut, I ain't gotta panic, push or rush. I'm in tune with the tune vibrations of the moon. I can see it in my soul, feel it in my gut. Wait, that's too deep. Let me tell you.
Jazzy Jeff, man, appreciate you having me. Welcome to the Corner Store Conversations.
Yes,
We're here,
sir.
Beautiful studio. What's the name of the studio?
The Hamptons.
The Hamptons. Why'd you name it that?
Because you feel like you're in the Hamptons.
Word.
It's grass and it's green and it smells good and
Right.
There's a horse next door, so the Hamptons.
Word, man. So we out here in Delaware. You've been a resident of Delaware for how long now?
I want to say 12 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
And how you like it out here?
I love it.
What made you move here?
It was funny because Delaware was the place that I used to bring my mom every Saturday to go shopping.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's tax free and all the rest of that. But it was just, it was an energy of Delaware that once I kind of got older and you kind of had to go through the city life and just how that is.
Right.
And I had a really good friend that he was the first person I know, from Philly to move to Delaware. And I would ask him like, why Delaware? And he was just like, you know what, is just a better living. So when I just really kind of got sick of Philadelphia to a certain degree, and I wanted to move somewhere. Like every athlete and entertainer moves to New Jersey, which I couldn't understand because you move to New Jersey and Jersey taxes are probably some of the highest.
Pay more money.
But people don't. When you're young, you ain't thinking about your taxes. You're thinking about the change. So, I had gotten to a point that it's kind of like I kind of want to keep a lot of my money. So I decided to look in Delaware, and and I got down here, and it took a second because I'm Philly born and raised, and I thought that I would never leave Philly in my life.
What was your biggest adjustment when you first moved out here, coming from the city to the suburbs?
What's funny? I don't know if I had an adjustment. I think it was if I had to say one, I lived in a secure building for 15, 16 years. And I moved in a house in Delaware that you could walk up and ring my doorbell. To the point that when I first moved, I lied and told everybody that I bought the house for my mom, and I was just getting it ready for my mom because I didn't want to tell everybody that I was there. And I remember one day in the summer, the ice cream man pulled up, all of the kids came out, and I just walked up to the truck and bought ice cream for all of the kids. And it was kind of like the icebreaker that you started to get to know the people in your neighborhood, and then you started to realize how much you missed that. Growing up in West Philly at my mom's house, you knew all your neighbors, you knew the corner store, you knew the surrounding area, and I thought it was really, really cool because I got to know all of my neighbors. And you had some people that would kind of knock on your door and just out of curiosity, but for the most part, I wanted to move back to a neighborhood and kind of get that feeling of community.
Right.
And so it wasn't a tough adjustment. I ain't never had to cut grass before.
Right.
So it was a lot of that stuff that it's kind of like, I had a trash chute at my old building. Now I got to put out trash and I got to separate the trash and recycle. You just throw all that in one.
Right.
So it was just that kind of normalcy. But I built a studio in my house, and that was kind of the beginning.
It's symbolic in a lot of ways. It's funny because, as we sitting here, we look at how beautiful it is, and I just think about you building the studio was really the beginnings of your transition from out of the industry.
Yeah.
And like we kind of talked about before, you started to realize I can do this myself. So kind of with congratulations on your new album, of course.
I appreciate it.
And so, as we kind of talk about that a little bit, I just the big thing about your album M3 was, like you said, finally free, finally breaking. So tell me how this studio was really the beginning of you doing stuff for yourself.
Well, the funny thing is, in making a record, the first thing that you have to do is you have to record it. So I think I built my first studio, I want to say in 1990 in Philly, and that was at a time that I didn't know any other recording artist that built his own studio. And I'm not talking about like a 4-track. Like I spent $175,000 on a board and a tape machine. Like I wanted a real studio. And what that enables you to do is to make music whenever you want and make the kind of music whenever you want. And that was the first step of freedom. Because now I don't have to get a budget from someone for them to kind of give me a suggestion on the kind of music to make. I can just do what I want, when I want, and deliver it when I want. The only hurdle that I couldn't get over is basically putting your record out, because you still needed to go through a distributor. You still needed to get your stuff manufactured, because especially back then it was, cassettes, and it was CDs, it was vinyl. So I crossed the hurdle of making it, but I couldn't manufacture it and put it out the way that I wanted. So it's been a long process of
learning
or just waiting for the world to catch up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there were so many big key moments. The whole Napster moment was huge, because that was the beginning of people not wanting to pay for music.
Talk about that. I know we talked before. Tell me that story when you realized, I forget where you told me you were, in another country, and you realized that it was over for the.
Well, you know what? We just traveling and DJing. I did a show in Bangkok, and there's a mall in Bangkok that the entire mall is illegal. Everything in this mall is illegal. Like it was bootleg everything. But you would go to these shops and it would be bootleg DVDs of movies. It would be bootleg DVDs of software. But it was bootleg DVDs of music. And DVD pretty much holds a lot more space than a CD. So you were able to buy like the Beatles anthology, like everything that the Beatles made for $12. And I would just go through this book, and I'm a music collector, and I sample. So I'm like, oh man, give me the Brazilian guitars and such and such. So I'm buying all of this stuff, and you give them the number, because it's a number of it. You give them the number, and you pay them, and you come back in 15 minutes, and they hand you a bag with all of the DVDs in it. And I remember walking out, and I walked to the mall, and I looked on both sides, and I was like, yo, it's over. It's over. If I just paid $12 for the Beatles catalog, how much is my catalog worth? It's a wrap. But I always think ahead.
Yeah.
So what I started to think about was, okay, if people are going to start getting music like this or downloading music like this, then the record companies aren't going to make the money that they made off of these projects. If they don't make the money that they made, they're not going to pay the producers what they used to get paid. And the budgets are going to go down. And then what's going to happen is all of these producers and all of these studios and all of this infrastructure with the music industry selling music is about to suffer. And that was actually my exit to Delaware. I was like, I'm closing the studio down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the studio where I live, because if I'm paying for where I live, I might as well put both of them together.
Cancel one whole mortgage.
But it was kind of like I did this 5-6 years before anybody else. So when I moved and closed the studio, it was almost perceived as I was doing bad, not thinking smart, because I didn't tell anybody. It was just kind of like, yo, like I'm traveling around the world DJing,
right?
So I'm cool with that, but the production money and the music industry money, I'm watching that change. So
it's once I having an insider trading tip, like you see the end of the stock market's crashing, it's time to get out.
Because you know what, it hadn't hit the U.S. yet. You know what I mean? Like a lot of those places are a little bit ahead of how we view things. So to watch the next couple of years, like I never forget, I was down here, my son came to visit me, and he asked me about an album, like, have you heard such and such? And I was like, no. And he walked over to the computer and was just, he's like, I put it on the computer. And I was like, how'd you do that? I said, did you get it at iTunes? And he started laughing at me. He's like, Pop, you a sucker. It's like, you a sucker if you paying for music. And I always realize, if you want to know what tomorrow is, ask a 14-year-old. You may think that they don't know. You may think that they're naive. They're naive in certain things, but they're always ahead of the curve of what's coming up next.
Right.
So once I started to realize that, you also got to look at it like we are never going to live in a world without music.
Right.
So you ain't got to worry about music going somewhere. Just the way that we access it,
right.
the way that the you make money off of it started to change. You know, it was kind of like, so it's going to be here. So let me just prepare for the change.
Mm. So we're gonna get back to your album and the industry stuff, but I want to take it back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing a little bit of research, and I saw that one of the things is it true they used to call you the bathroom DJ?
Oh, absolutely.
It was like they said that you were the DJ when you first started. That used to DJ when the real DJ went to the bathroom.
That's it. That's
wow.
cutting your teeth.
So
that's cutting your teeth. You don't ever start at the top.
How'd you do that? You just went up, start asking people like, "Let me spin." Or,
I had some
like 10 or 12,
like
or 10,
11. I had older DJs in my neighborhood and on my block.
Mm-hmm.
That the block party scene was huge.
Mm-hmm.
The house party scene was huge. So it just really got to the point that I loved music so much that I would just hang around them. I would look at all of the records, and whenever they would in the summertime they put the speaker on the porch and they play music for the neighborhood. And every once in a while you'd be like, pick a record and play it. So they would kind of really push me on, but when they would do events, and it got to the point that it's like, yo, I gotta go take a leak. Do me a favor, play something. And I would mess around, try to play like 19 records in 7 minutes, or just keep giving them bottles of water so they keep going to the bathroom. But it was just, what it was. It was more so the lesson of you don't ever start at the top. You don't ever start anywhere close to the top. A lot of times you got to be the person to dump the trash, get the coffee, and clean out whatever, you want. You need to be, what you really want to do, you need to be in the room with the person who's doing it to soak up as much knowledge as you can.
I feel like a lot of new people don't get that now. No. I feel like now a lot of the new millennial age kids think that they're entitled to that. But you had to keep poking them.
Well, it's crazy, and the only thing that sucks about that is longevity will be the teacher. Because when you realize that everything that you tried to do for 3 months hasn't worked, and you realize that you've been doing it for 12, 15 years, you start to look in the mirror and figure out that I got to try something else. Or maybe I need to try a different approach. Mm-hmm. Like, there are no cutting corners. There's no fast track, and I think what happens is sometimes it's glorified by the person who, bust in the room and bust the freestyle and he got the deal. He's one of 100 million.
Right.
I don't like the mods. I don't like the mods.
So when you got up with Will, y'all formed the group. Mm-hmm. I saw that you had won, I think, a DJ competition in like '86, and came back and got your first deal right after that. What, if you can explain, what was that first deal in the terms of how you speak out now about how record deals can be? Like, can you give us the insight of what that deal was like?
Well, it's funny. Me speaking about how they are now is from experience, and it's also from where we are today. And one of the things that I'm very clear to explain to people, that there weren't any options back then. So, because you would get the people like, man, you took that deal, I would have never took that. It's kind of like, that was the only thing that was out there. Like, you're speaking from experience today that you got options.
Right.
It's kind of like a lot of stuff that our parents went through, they didn't have options. We got the options, we got it from the hard work that they kind of put in.
Right.
So it was a typical record deal. What I tell people, is, first of all, you're trying to get to a position that you want people to know who you are and what you can do. And somebody is offering you an option to put music out. You don't know anything about the music business. You got an uncle who's a plumber. He's the only one in your family that got a business. So when they give you the contract, you take it to your uncle because he's the most business savvy person in your family. And he looks it over and he says, it looks pretty good to me, because he doesn't know. And then you end up signing it. And you really sign things with the mindset that, let me just get in and on and I'm going to work it out later. Like, there's so many people that did that it's kind of like you end up, signing the deal. We signed a deal with a local record company, and we put out a record, and the record popped. Like, that's the thing that changes everything is putting out good music.
Right.
You know, you put something out and the record started to pop and people started to get to know who you are. You know you're in this bad deal. He ended up getting in, you know, a little bit of an issue. And we ended up getting signed over to Jive through a distribution deal, but it was still with this label. And he got in a bad way and basically sold us directly to Jive right before He's the DJ, I'm the Rapper came out.
Wow.
Which things would have greatly been different if he would have held on to it.
Wow.
But, you know, like we were in the studio recording that album and the president of the label came in and said, you guys are officially on Jive. And that, you know, and we didn't know any better. We just, all we knew is Jive is a well-known label. We know people who are on Jive. We know people who, you know, have become famous. You thought it was a good
thing at first. It was like,
oh, absolutely, because you don't necessarily know the ins and outs of the structure of the music business. And I like to look at it like the music business is you finding out Santa Claus isn't real. Like you have an idea in your brain of how it is and how it's supposed to work,
right,
and how it's supposed to go. And then when you start to find out, you know, how it is, you know, that changes everything. I was telling someone yesterday that we always talk about, oh my God, I wish such and such would go back to his first album.
Yeah.
Like how he was.
Yeah.
What you don't realize is you put your heart and soul in your first album because you believe that Santa Claus exists. And when you find out, you know, you take the example of someone who has a successful record. You sell 1.5 million, 2 million records. Everybody knows who you are. You on MTV. I'm doing shows. I got all of the girls. You know, I done bought me a car. I done got all of this stuff because in my brain, if I sold 2 million records, I probably got a $10 million check coming. And what you get is a statement. You don't get a check. You get a statement that says that you're $3.5 million in debt. And you immediately go into panic mode. Because now it's kind of like, yo, I was expecting that $10 million check to pay for this apartment and this chain and this car. And what am I going to do? Everybody knows my name. How am I going to do? And then they put their hand on your shoulder and they say, you know what? I got you. This is what we're going to do. We're going to try it again. And I'm going to give you some more money to go in the studio and record another album. And you are so relieved. But think about your mindset making that second album. That second album is made in survival mode. That's not creative. That's, oh my God, I got to pay my rent. That wasn't how your first album was done.
Right.
That's why the difference in what someone's first album and someone's second album sounds like happens a lot of times.
That's what they call that sophomore slump.
We as the art or as the consumers are the ones that are sitting there saying, oh man, like what happened?
Right.
Because you don't follow that path of the artist of, you know, now I'm in the studio and I'm not having fun no more. I got it. Like every song in your brain has to be a hit, and that's not how you made your first one.
Wow. So when did you start to realize that something wasn't right? Like, was there a time between you and Will where one person realized it before the other person, or did you both start asking questions? Like, did you have to pull him along, or he had to pull you along?
You know, I'm very much a common sense person.
Right.
Sometimes to my detriment. That if it makes sense, I'm cool. I'm 100% cool. If you can show me the logic in it. When it doesn't make sense is when it kind of bothers me. And it was kind of like, you know, you sign this record deal, and you know, they tell you the terms of the record deal. The lawyer's kind of going over it, and he's kind of like, okay, well, you guys get 8 points. And I'm kind of like, all right, 8 points. I don't really understand what the point thing is. So, you know, I go and tell my mom, like, yup, signed the record deal. Oh, man, I'm so happy for you, baby. You made it. How much do you make at your job? And I'm like, 8 points. And she's like, well, how much is 8 points? Hold up. Let me go find out. So you go and sit back. You know, you go back, and it's kind of like, okay, you know what? If I was making $100 and you tell me I was making 50%, I know how much that is.
Right.
If I was making, you know, if we split something, or you told me that I was making $5 out of every $10, I know how much that is.
Right.
I don't know how much a point is. How much is a point? And you start getting these answers. Well, it could it could equal up to this depending on this. Okay, all right, I'm really confused because when I go and buy a candy bar, I know it's 25 cents. I give you $1, you give me 3/4 back. Why is it so difficult? What I don't understand. And as soon as I said that, you're the troublemaker.
Because they always probably leave themselves a trap door to take your money. They don't.
Well, you know what it is? It's confusing. And it's deliberately confusing. It's kind of like you getting a cell phone. You can get into a cell phone in 13 seconds, but it takes you 8 days to get out.
Right.
You got to talk to 97 different people to get out. Like it's I'm gonna make it easy to get you in, but to let you go. So once it was kind of like you're the troublemaker, I'm kind of like by no way, shape, or form have I ever been a troublemaker. I'm just trying to ask a question to take back to my mom, to tell my mom how much I make at my job.
What was Will's feeling about all this?
You know, like sometimes it wasn't. Like, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like everybody don't ask those questions.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because the one thing that has always haunted me is I never got an answer because there's not a clear-cut answer.
Right.
So now I'm sitting back and I'm looking around like, okay, is Michael Jackson cool with this shit? Prince, like, because if I ain't met someone who can give me the clear-cut answer, but we all are doing it, now I'm feeling dumb because I'm like, should I not be asking these questions? Like, but that doesn't make sense to me. Like, I made a mixtape. The first time that I ever made a mixtape to sell, I went and did the tape. I had a telex machine. I ran off copies. I went to my man who did graphic design. He did the cover. We went to Kinko's, got them pressed up, came back, slapped them on it, put them in the box, drove them to Sound of Market Street and all of the stores in Philly. Mm-hmm. And they said, listen, we sell the tapes for 10, we'll give you 5. So I know I got a 50-50 deal. Mm-hmm. And I'm giving you the tapes, you give me $50 every box. And when they sell out, they pick up, hey, Jeff, we need some more. Yep. I'm burning them, bringing them up. I'm trying to like, okay, so how do you graduate to the majors and someone pay you in points? I'm like, I knew what I was making by making a mixtape. Yeah. Why are you trying to confuse me now? Right. And that always stayed in the back of my mind. That it never set with me that I didn't understand. You know, keep in mind, I had a job for 20 something years and didn't know how much money I was making.
Right.
So it's kind of like you know, when you're lucky enough to get a royalty check and they hand you the check. Like I was the person that I remember one of the first big checks Will and I got was $1.6 million. And I was the person that looked at the check and was like, wow, it could be, or it should be maybe $5 million. Mm. But you're never going to give back a $1.6 million check.
Right.
And they know that. You looked at it and you take it to the bank and you cash it and you spend it. Like they know because you try to do an audit on a record company, that's at least 2 years. So wait, I got to give back the 1.6. Like it ain't like you're going to take the $1.6 million and then do the audit. Mm. You got to get a check back.
Right.
So now you're like, I done waited 9 months for this check, incurred 9 months of debt that you want me to give it back to go through the motions to find out? You know, you charging me $490,000 for miscellaneous. Mm. What's miscellaneous? Stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff like what? Like and
water bottles.
You don't get an explanation for that. That you kind of like, so you can just make up whatever number that you want. So that was just one of the things that, you know, from the beginning never sat with me.
Right.
You know, we kept making music and kept doing records, but you know, the show aspect of it is what really kind of kept me going because you knew how much you were going to make a show. There wasn't any, you know, point system or anything like that. I knew the dollar amount, and that's what just really kind of kept you going. And you know, whenever you got a royalty check, you almost kind of said, okay, I just got to take whatever they give you.
Right.
But that never left the back of my mind.
So your new album M3 is really 10 years in the making. You know what I mean? I know you like you said M3 finally free. What took so long in that 10 years for you to come out with your next album? Like what did that 10 years consist of? Was it legal
the
stuff,
last
or?
time because the 2 albums before this were on independent labels.
Okay.
the first album that I did, The Magnificent, was in 2002. A label out of London approached me. It was just basically make an album of what you are as a producer. And I really made that album because I needed somebody to push me in the pool. I need somebody to push me to kind of do it. And I did it. And, and it was one of those albums, we sold like 165,000 copies on an independent label, which was the most they ever sold. But I got a royalty statement that said I was $40,000 in the hole. And I just kind of laughed because it was kind of like, this is the cycle all over again. But I was kind of like, you know what? I knew what I was getting to when I did this. I didn't do this for the money. I did this because I needed somebody to push me creatively.
Right.
So I respectfully went to him and said, you know what? I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm going to do this on my own, because the financial stuff didn't work out.
Right.
And he ended up coming back, and he was just kind of like, okay, I'll tell you what, let's do the second project, and we can do this as a 50-50 split, which kind of made more sense. Now we're talking, the language that I understand. But what I didn't realize, or what he didn't necessarily divulge, was he lost his distributor and had to get a new distributor, and the new distributor took 70% of his money.
Ooh.
So now you're doing a 50-50 deal with someone who's getting 30%, which drops you back to 15%, which is very close to the 8 points that you were getting.
Man.
So
there's always some loophole.
But you know what? What was cool is doing it independent. I did a song with CL Smooth that they put in NBA Live and gave $40,000 for that. I did a song with Rhyme Fest that was featured in Entourage, and they paid $40,000 for that. So I'm kind of like, before the album even came out, I've got 2 licensing placements, because that's stuff that as an artist, you don't ever hear about that.
Right.
Like, it's a whole different ball game. That it's kind of like when somebody wants your stuff in a movie or something like that. When you own the rights of it, you negotiate the terms and you get the money. So it was almost like I had completely repaid all of the money that was given to me to make the album before the album even came out, just off of these 2 licensing deals. So now I'm kind of like, okay, this is everything that comes in from here on is gravy, and kind of the same thing. It didn't work out, but the second album, both the first album and the second album, were made pre-social media. There was no social media.
Right.
Like, the first album was made, there was vinyl, CDs. The second album came in the explosion of the iTunes era.
Right.
So now it's kind of like, okay, you telling me it costs $35,000 in manufacturing costs to press up all of this stuff. The second album, we did 100,000 downloads. How much it cost us to download? That was an email. Like, I'm paying you for your AOL bill. That's $19 a month. So that's all gravy now.
Right.
But it was me just figuring out, like, things are changing.
Right.
So the time that I waited to get to this album had more to do with, now we're in a social media era, which I'm kind of like, wow, this is crazy, because what I understood about social media is this gives me a direct line to talk to the people who like what you do.
Right.
I don't have a middleman. Record companies were always the middleman. That it's kind of like, okay, it's time for you to put out a project. Now we're going to cut on the marketing and promotion, and we're going to tell everybody what you're doing. And now your fans is like, oh, man, we loving you. And as soon as your album starts to die out, they cut the switch off. Social media is the switch. That it's kind of like, wow, I don't need a go-between to do this. Now I can talk directly to you. I can tell you I'm watching the Eagles game.
Right.
I can tell you, oh, man, the Sixers suck. But I can also tell you I'm dropping something next week. I can also ask questions. And once that really started to become more defined, I could start to see the end game, because it's kind of like, all I really want is access to the people who like what you do. Right. It's record companies or make you think that you really want everyone. And you don't want everyone. You just want the people that mess with you. I'm a convenience store. And this is what I got. I sell this. I don't, I don't sell that. I just want to sell what I sell to the people that I sell. I'm not Walmart.
Right.
And that's the whole thing. Like, the interpretation or the way that people kind of make you understand, they want to make you think that you're Walmart. I don't do everything. I don't want to do everything. I want to do what I do, and I want to serve the people who like what I do. You know, and once you kind of realize that I got a direct line to those people, then it's kind of like I'm good. Like I'm good.